Discover, engage, elevate, artifact with Joshua on Lola FM podcast.
The sound of Arabia.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of Artifact. We have with us in the studio Miguel. Miguel, please give us an introduction about yourself.
Hi, Joshua. It's a pleasure to be here in Alula FM. Thank you so much for having me. So my name is Miguel Blanco. I work in public art and as an art advisor, art and cultural advisor for RCRC, the Royal Commission for Riyadh City, and I've been working in this field for quite some time. However, I think my background in the field is quite heterogeneous. I'm a lawyer by training, and so my academic background is law and international relations, which is not your usual background in the arts. But I think when you look back a little bit on how you arrive where you are, I think is really interesting how you can connect the dots. And
can you tell us about that a little bit? How did you connect those dots?
Well, I think I work in consultancy for a number of years, and then my first position in the cultural realm was with Qatar Museums in the strategy team. So I joined the strategy team of Qatar Museums, and I started working with artists. Like one of the first projects that I worked on was a public art called Seven by Richard Serra, which is in the Doha Corniche. And I think the fact that I have a legal background and I'm very comfortable with contracts, with RFPs, with legal language, I think really supported the different efforts, and the completion of these projects in quite a short time.
So you went from being an acronyms expert into an art expert, but you didn't tell us what was the spark? What made you move from acronyms to art?
Now, the second question, obviously, even during law school, I've always been really interested in the arts. Mm-hmm. So I think at law school, I was the director of my faculty of my college theater group. So we were doing incredible plays, German existentialism, some very dark plays like Heine Müller and Volokolamp's very, very dark theater plays, or Wojciech or Hamlet Machine. Very, very interesting. We were really passionate about it. So I was obviously studying law, but I always had a deep interest in the arts, also in film. And then when I had the opportunity to join the museums in Qatar, I think that really sparked something. And working with Richard Serra, which is at the time probably the number one artist alive, when we were working on this incredible 7 plinth sculpture in the Corniche. I think that really sparked something, and working with creative people, working with artists, working with curators, working in this field is something that I personally find fascinating. So I think I come from a different background, but the skills that I bring have proven really useful to be able to manage these very large projects in the region.
So really, you are kind of a silver bullet. Like, the administrative side of procuring and curating and delivering large art projects, and then you also develop this personal passion for art. So I guess you're essentially here, besides the fact that you love living in Saudi Arabia, from what I hear, you also are looking to recreate the success that you had in Doha and bring it here to Riyadh.
I think beyond that, I came to Riyadh in 2018, and I do actually really love Riyadh. It's my home, and I've developed incredible friendships here. I think the people of Riyadh are incredibly welcoming, and the city is fascinating. The pace of change is incredible. the vision, the speed in which that vision is being transformed into a reality is unparalleled. I think everyone working in the creative industries, probably in most industries, but definitely in the creative industries in Riyadh today, in Saudi Arabia today, I think we are all incredibly lucky and incredibly excited to be part of this historical moment. So no, I do really enjoy living in Riyadh and Saudi Arabia. I really enjoy what we do with the projects that we're working on, which I think they're fantastic. And from the Royal Commission, I think we can really see impact in the city. And I think seeing that impact is really motivating day to day.
That is the Royal Commission for Riyadh City, for those of you who are wondering. Let's get right into your area of expertise. Please. Which is the area that you're currently working in, Mr. Miguel. What is public art? So I would think that all art is public, right? Like, so an artist creates a work of art. I think, or I imagine, as a lay person, as a person who is not involved in the art sector directly, I would imagine that if I'm creating any work of art, I'm expecting or assuming that this art will be viewed by the public. But you're telling me there's a differentiation between what is known as public art and what might be non-public art.
Public art is art in the public realm.
Okay.
So I think the number one qualifier of public art is accessibility. So public art needs to be accessible from a physical point of view. So you need to be able to
be defined as public art.
To be defined as public art. So it cannot be in a private setting that is not accessible. It needs to be in a public setting. It could be funded by government funds, could be funded by private funds, but it needs to be accessible in a square, in a street, it needs to be accessible to the public. And it also has to be accessible from an intellectual point of view. I think it's very important to have both sides. No, it's like people need to be able to, visitors need to be able to encounter the art, but also they need to be able to appreciate the art regardless of the different sophistication levels in understanding of contemporary art that we might find in our cities. And I think keeping that accessibility at both levels is incredibly important for public art.
So one of the defining features of public art, as you mentioned, would have to be accessibility. But what is the overall value of public art? What does public art do for public spaces?
I think a lot of things. If not, we wouldn't be doing this. But to keep the answer short and to maybe focus this, and I think we can probably talk a bit more about some examples. But I think three of the main elements of the benefits of public art are the bringing joy into people's lives. I think sparking joy into the life of visitors and residents alike by beautifying the city, by encountering these works of art that make you think, that bring you joy, that are unexpected. Also, as a second point, I think creating a sense of city pride. And I think this is really, really important when we are developing, when we are all working into building the Riyadh of tomorrow. I think to have these projects that bring us together and make us feel proud of where we live or on who we are. I think
that's actually very profound. Like, I'm actually having a very genuine, profound moment when you said that public art serves the purpose of also letting citizens of that, or citizens or residents, or people living in that city, they are able to partake in a sense of pride in that city. And now that I'm thinking about, you're right, stamps that are centered around cities always have a work of public art featured in them. Museums, when people are promoting cities, they always display these works of public art as indicators of the originality or the uniqueness of that city. So I really never thought about public art in that way. But you're telling me that public art is serving this purpose of people, feeling pride for their cities. But why is that also important? Why is it important that if I live in Riyadh, or I live in Al-Ula, or I live in Jeddah, or I live in Doha, Qatar, or Washington, D.C., why is it important that I have pride in my city?
I think that definitely impacts on the quality of life and the kind of people that the city attracts. Riyadh wants to be one of the top 20 cities in the world in the next few years, top 10 in a little bit longer. And to do so, you just need to attract the best talent. You just want the best people around the world, the best professionals in their industry to come and live in Riyadh and want to live in Riyadh. And I think a big part of that, and there's many different organizations, institutions working on the same direction to increase the quality of life of all of us living in Riyadh. And I think public art has a big role to play in that field.
That is the third role that you listed. The first one was quality of life, yes. And then you said bringing joy to citizens and then bringing pride. Is there any other points that you think are worth mentioning when it comes to the value of public art?
I think the value that it actually brings, the direct value that it brings into the creative economy. I think creative economy is more and more important for our economies in our industries and in our economies in 2024. Definitely is a very important economy, part of the economy for Saudi Arabia, looking at Vision 2030 and beyond. So I think having a very strong public art program brings a lot of opportunities for residents, for citizens, for companies, local and international. And I think building that ecosystem, building up that fabric of creative industries, I think is very, very important for us.
So I think, I don't want to over summarize your points, but maybe it's worth mentioning that public art helps a city become relevant to the international community, relevant to the local community, because these works of art play such a significant role in those four, affirmations that you mentioned when it comes to public art. When it comes to the community, Miguel, what impact does the community have on public art, and what does public art have on the community as far as effects are concerned?
I think that it's really important to clarify that the main reason that we do what we do create these programs of public art where we transform the city into a gallery without walls are for the people of Riyadh. So I think the people of Riyadh is the main focus of all the programs under Riyadh Art. Could be New Riyadh that we'll talk in a little bit, or any of the other programs. I think and this is at many different levels. No, obviously the first one is as an audience, which we've discussed, and is very important for us just to connect with our audience to make our art accessible at intellectual and physical levels. It's also very important for us to provide opportunities for young residents of Riyadh to be part of these programs. So we have internship programs, we have volunteering programs, we have programs in which we engage young graduates, and through the years, the first edition of New Riyadh, which was the first program from Riyadh Art, was in 2021, March 2021. Through the years, we've seen a lot of the people that work with us in that first edition, now working in many different institutions, in Alula or in Ministry of Culture, in Minsk, in many other different institutions. And for us, there's a sense of pride as well. No, we are building that creative economy from the ground. We're providing opportunities for young Saudis and residents to actually join this workforce in the creative industries. That also brings opportunities for businesses as well, local and international. And again, I think that's all part of the ecosystem, and ultimately, the more art we bring and the more our public art programs are recognized, it will impact the tourism and a number of other indicators.
So I don't mean to put you on the spot, but because of your legal training, I'm sure you're really good at this. Can you give us a benchmark, which another term that you're very familiar with, I'm sure, as an advisor? What other international or local examples can you give on public art's impact on the community?
I think there's a lot, and we don't have to be really, really far. We don't have to go really, really far. And I think maybe for most people, they can probably recognize the Bean in Chicago by Anish Kapoor as an icon for the city. And I think something that is being quoted by everybody as a very successful case of a public artwork that actually represents the city and bring tourism.
And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Bean in Chicago, it's a metallic.
It's a very large reflective shape bean that is placed in the public ground in Chicago, and that has actually just become an icon, a complete icon for the city.
That's the first thing I thought of when you said Chicago, actually.
By artist Anish Kapoor. I think the bean is a really good example, but we don't have to go that far. I think Jeddah, for instance, is an incredible example of very successful public art. And during the 70s, the Mayor Mohammed Farsi, he developed this program of public art where he has incredible sculptures sculptures by Henry Moore, by Joan Miró, by Alexander Calder, and I think this is very close to us, obviously in Jeddah, in the kingdom, and it's an incredible example of how the sculpture park and the cornice and the area surrounding those sculptures is a sense of pride for the citizens of Jeddah, and it's a place where people enjoy spending time surrounded by this work. So I think we can find a lot of examples around the world, but Jeddah is a very good one.
Artifact with Joshua on Al Ula FM podcast. The sound of Arabia.
But tell me about your favorite work of public art. Perhaps one that inspired you.
There's too many, I think,
Of course.
So I guess, since we are in Al Ula FM, I have to say the first edition of Desert X in Al Ula in 2020, I think was fantastic. There was an incredible work by Saudi artist Muhannad Shono, The Lost Path, which I still remember. Also, I think in the 2022 edition of Desert X, incredible artwork by Dana Wartani, with a reinterpretation of the Lonely Castle in Hegra, a geometrical interpretation. Looking into some of examples in Al Ula, I think what we've done through the years in Nur Riyadh, we've also had some very positive impact, and I have some favorite works as well. I think the work by Bob Wilson in Turef Palace in 2021 was incredible. But if we go a little bit back at some of the artworks that maybe inspired me,
the closest to your heart
in my earlier career, probably if I have to choose one, it will be East West West East by Richard Serra in the north of Qatar. It's an artwork that there are like 20-meter plinths, 4 plinths, one after another, separated around 250 meters each. So it's like a kilometer, and you have to drive for 2 hours to get there. So it's in the public realm, but it's a little bit out of the way. But that makes it really, really special. I think this is one of the artworks where I when I arrived there for the first time, I really felt overwhelmed by emotion and on how powerful this artwork was in the landscape. And
we're able to feel that emotion. I imagine, the audience doesn't see us, but you're able to convey the emotion that you felt at that public art space, which was a while ago in a different part of the world, and you're able to bring it here in our studios, and you're able to convey that emotion. And so I guess that it says a lot about the power of public art.
I really believe in the power of art and public art to bring people together and to awaken emotions that are not necessarily there before. Art can awaken emotions and surprises on how we feel when we are presented with certain works of art. No, I think that's definitely one of the powers that art has.
So tell me, Miguel, what are some opportunities that you think cities, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Riyadh or Ula, it could be any city, but cities in general, okay, without having to mention too much about a specific city, what do you think cities in general, from your expertise, what opportunities are they missing when it comes to public art? What do you wish there was more of in the cities of the world when it comes to public art?
I think art can play a very positive role in so many different ways in cities. And in Riyadh Art, going back to the project that we're working on, I think we looked around the world on what are the examples that work in different cities, what are the examples that don't work, and how can we apply the learnings that are relevant for Riyadh today into our own program. And in the next few years, we're going to see the deployment of more than 1,000 public artworks across the whole fabric of Riyadh, including artworks in the metro and bus networks, including artworks in roundabouts, parks, playgrounds designed by artists in different parks around the city. Gateways welcoming visitors in the highways, in the main highways into Riyadh, and I think all of those together with like ephemeral programs like to Sculpture Symposium, which is a fantastic sculpture symposium happening in January, where we invite 30 artists from around the world and also Saudi artists to sculpt large pieces of Saudi stone, and then they will be distributed once the sculptures are finished. They will be redistributed around the city, and also New Riyadh, which will be we had 3 editions so far, and then the last edition we have more than 3 million visitors. So I think that's definitely the combination of ephemeral and permanent, the combination of like public transport, roundabouts, squares, gateways. I think bringing all of these different elements is something that definitely will benefit any city, and that's what we're working on in Riyadh.
It brings me to a point to detractors. I'm sure in your day-to-day life, in your day-to-day work, because you're working in the public sphere, you may come across some detractors who might say, well, art is supposed to be organic. It's supposed to come from maybe, people who are disenfranchised in society, and maybe they should be the ones doing this work. And here you are, an official person with an official background, with so much, professional power pushing you through these projects. What do you say to those people? What is the real role of city governments or national governments in providing ecosystems for the development of authentic art?
I think we're really privileged in Saudi Arabia today with the ecosystem of artists, curators, dedicated fabricators, art professionals in general. It's very rare that you find like such a talented generation of artists, and I think since like mid 2000s we've seen a renaissance in contemporary Saudi art, and every year we see more and more talented artists being part of like very large projects. We've just seen the Regia Biennale closing but last week to an incredible success of visitor numbers and critics, incredible work that our colleagues at the Regia Biennale Foundation are doing, where they actually discover a lot of like new artists as well as bringing some very established names. And we see also in Alula with the Arts Festival in February and Desert X and the different programs that Alula is bringing, the residency in Mabiti. So there's like so many programs where different institutions are discovering new talent. But I mean, to discover new talent is not that easy. It's like the talent has to be there. And I think the quality of the artwork that we're seeing in Saudi Arabia and the quality of the artist and to see the progression in their careers, I think this is when we look back at this in a few years from now, I think we'll probably be qualified as a movement. No, I think that many talented people in one place at the one time. Certainly the fact that there's like a great interest from the government and there are like budgets and resources allocated for new commissions for these large cultural projects, it definitely helps. But the talent has to be there. No? And I think the next challenge, I guess, is for the ecosystem to develop a more sustainable, more commercial, less top-down fabric. So where we see more galleries, where we see more maybe small art fairs, where we see a lot more collectors. We need more collectors. So I invite anybody listening to reach out to the institutions that are producing art, reach out to the artists. We need more collectors in Saudi Arabia, because that's going to help the ecosystem develop in a way beyond the public commissions that we're seeing now, that they are fantastic right now, but that we just need more elements into the mix in the near future. But I think we are living an incredible moment, historical moment for the arts in Saudi Arabia.
Artifact with Joshua on Al Ula FM podcast. The sound of Arabia.
I'm definitely feeling it from your energy and your passion, and I'm glad to hear that the public sector is serving as a catalyst instead of serving as some sort of creator of non-authentic arts. In fact, what you're saying is the public sector is enabling authentic talent by creating meaningful ecosystems for them to create their authentic works of art. And I think that is extremely, extremely valuable. There's this question that I ask every art expert who joins us, and I want to know what you think about AI art. Now, art, as we traditionally understand it, must be inspired, at least inspired by, I mean, like, you could be creating a great work of art, for instance, like the Statue of Liberty, which is obviously not something that one single artist can do by himself or herself. So it is normal that maybe an artist can oversee people or a group of people, or it could oversee technologies building art, right? I don't think there's any confusion or there's any argument against the use of tools and creating human-inspired art. But what do you think about art that is purely inspired and created by AI? Is that really art?
I think that's a great question. I think obviously there's a meaningful debate around AI and the different applications of AI, including art. And I think you make a very valid point about tools, no? And I think artists, and it's important to qualify that they're always innovators. And you look in history, and many artists have been at the forefront of technology, using technologies and tools that maybe other people were not using, or they have been using it in different ways. And I think today is no different than in the past. And when we look at AI is another tool. Definitely today, with large language models and with the AI that we have, the generative AI that we have today, is a tool. It needs to be prompted. So I guess the art could be in how good is your prompt. So I mean, I guess if I prompt the AI just to make a painting of a cat chasing a dog, it's like you can wonder how good is that prompt. If Refik Anadol, which is one of the leading artists working with AI, works with a machine learning network that captures data from millions of inputs across his different projects, maybe in the Amazon, maybe in America, but maybe in the Middle East, as he's done, and through that input, he works with different prompts to get the AI, that system, to generate like a set of images. That's very valuable, and that's very meaningful, and that research and that process is valuable on its own right. So I think if we look back in history as well, like photography started to develop in the early 19th century, but it took almost a century for a photographer to exhibit in a museum, Albert Stiglitz in New York in the 1910. So there was a lot of resistance to consider photography
as art,
because
it could have just been viewed as documentation.
Could be something. I mean, obviously, like naturalist painters were not very happy about that. So you just need to give time, and humans, we are resistant to change. No, we are very adaptable, and in the end, we adapt to a lot of different circumstances because it's very hard. But we are by nature resistant to change. So I understand why. Obviously, there's this debate about AI. I think we're really, really far still from what I understand from computer sciences at the moment, from artificial general intelligence, which it will be in theory able to prompt itself. But until we arrive to that point, any AI or any art developed by AI will require a human prompt. So I guess we can debate whether that prompt, the quality of that prompt is good or not, or whether the quality of that prompt and the result constitute art or not. But in the end, it's a tool, like, as you discussed, could be a photographic camera, like could be a foundry, like could be a stencil, is another tool.
Excellent. Actually, just like as a follow-up question, so do you ever imagine that an AI artist will one day be just as revered or respected as, for instance, Michelangelo or Leonardo da Vinci or any of the other famous artists?
I think we have incredible artists that have been working with very innovative tools. Like you can, on the next days, we will have a Team Lab opening their permanent space in Jeddah. And Team Lab, they've been innovative with immersive spaces, with technology, with sensors, with video. So that's just one example. No, we can look at many artists that have been working with at the forefront of technology, and I'm sure that some artists working with AI in the future will be considered as the leading artists of their generation. The question, and going back to when will AI will prompt itself, is like, I mean, if it's an artist working with AI as a tool, for sure, I think it will be considered a very valid tool. If we're talking about AIs prompting themselves, and it will be just not an artist working with AI, but it will be an AI artist, I think that's something that I'm not sure how the future is going to look or what the regulation, but
now you're saying, so AI art is art, but with conditions.
Not with conditions. I'm saying right now it's a tool.
Okay.
Right now it's a tool, and it's a tool like any other tool, and it depends on the artist what you make with it.
Okay.
No, but my point is like we don't know how the future looks, and whether like an AI entity without human prompts will be able to generate art. And I think that's a question for maybe 10, 20 years from now.
So we know that art or public art serves the role of aesthetics in beautifying a city, Miguel. But besides the aesthetics, for the sake of pure aesthetics, what are some practical applications for public art? And what I mean by that is there a public art that, for instance, lessens traffic or cools down the city from urban heat? Or is there a public art that creates shade? Or is there a public art that also serves as like a watering function or a cooling function for passerbyers? Is there practical applications of public art?
I think there's plenty, and you listed a number of them. No? We have definitely for navigation purposes, and I think is very important to sometimes for cities that they have like very complex networks. It's easy to navigate if you have like different artworks placed in key locations, so you can navigate this from roundabout A to roundabout B. Definitely to signal when you come into the city, I think to have like these welcoming gateways or these artwork signaling when you enter or exit the city. Also to create gathering spaces for the people in the cities. I think that's an incredible function. I think people tend to gather around places that they like, that they consider beautiful, they want to spend time with their families, and this could be like, I don't know, creating like sculptural gardens. This could be creating pavilions like the Serpentine Pavilion or some of the programs from Riyadh Art that we will create in an urban art labs, where we also will have pavilions around the city, or even in New Riyadh when we also create that function as well of creating spaces in the public where the citizens gather. So in terms of promoting tourism, I think that's also a very practical element that public art really contributes in the cities. Now we mentioned the Bean, but we can mention like many others. Like, I mean, for instance, in Brazil you have Inhotim, which is close to Belo Horizonte, which is not a very well-off part of the country, and there's this public art state with more than 700 artworks that brings great amounts of tourism and economic progress to the region. We have, for instance, also in Alula, the artworks that are in distributed around Alula, for instance, the Manalda Guayan, the trampolines that you have in Habitas Hotel, and the future projects in Wadi Al-Fan. I think there's an expectation for thousands of tourists to come to these artworks. So I think there's like many different benefits to.
And that's public and interactive, because you can actually get on the trampolines. You can actually be a part of the artistic experience.
Interactive artworks is definitely a large part of public artworks. Not all of them are interactive, but there's a number of them where you also have the swings, also as an example in Alula by Superflex. Definitely interactive art is a very engaging and important. More and more, I think interactive art is very popular with visitors, and it's very popular in social media. People love to share those stories.
Artifact with Joshua on Al Ula FM podcast. The sound of Arabia.
I see videos on social media, whether they be on Instagram or they be on TikTok or wherever, and I see a certain video And even though they don't mention where this video was filmed, those public art indicators really do give you so much information about the setting, the social economic situation, the environmental situation. Like those public art works really do serve as extremely important pointers. And as you said, they're real important navigation tools. And not only for people who are actually in that city, but for people who are getting content from that city, they're able to be pointed in the direction of that city. And as you mentioned, that serves a huge benefit when it comes to promoting tourism for those cities. What about the environmental concerns? Is there any environmental concerns when it comes to public art? Are people mad about, the pigeons don't have a place to land anymore, or, you're taking up so much green space, or you have to uproot a tree? Is that a concern that people have when it comes to public art? Or have you noticed that people are usually they have more bandwidth when it comes to being patient with public art and its environmental? Because you were telling me that you're working on sculpture, and the sculptures were using raw material from Saudi Arabia's nature, for instance, like whether it be, from a cliff or from a mountain or from... Is there some sort of, is the environmental impact negligible when it comes to public art, or is it considerable yet considered negligible because of all the benefits of the public art? Can you give us your perspective?
Climate is definitely one of the key challenges of our age. I think we are all very working on public art. We're all very aware of this, and we try to minimize the impact that we have. When we talk about the stones, for instance, of Tuwaiq sculpture, originally the sculptures were actually coming from Oman on the first edition of Tuwaiq. So we made a conscious effort to source this stone locally, among other reasons, for environmental reasons, because the transportation of more than 100 tons of a stone actually has a massive impact on the climate, on the environment. So by sourcing our stone locally, first, I think also works on the city pride. So this is like Saudi stone, and we're happy this Saudi stone. Stone is also it's a very durable material that requires minimal maintenance.
Been around for hundreds of millions of years.
Exactly. And once you place them, it's like it doesn't require a lot of maintenance, a lot of cleaning, a lot of other type of artworks, they require a lot more maintenance. So I think that's a very environmentally conscious decision. When we look into other materials or other type of fabrication, from Nurriat, we always try to minimize the ecological impact of everything that we do, and I think public art can also be a catalyst for awareness on environmental issues and on change and things.
As a messenger, serves
as a messenger, as making us think. I think we can see, for instance, the very famous Agnes Dens wheat field when she actually took this field, created this field of wheat next to Wall Street in New York back in the 80s, and how that raised awareness about gentrification, about climate, environment. We see one of the artists of our festival, and Agnes Dens, she will be in Alula, is one of the 5 artists that will be creating works in Wadi Al Fan. In one of the artists that work with us, Dan Rosegard, in several editions of Nurriat, is very conscious about environment as well, and he's created a machine. It's called a smoke-free machine that is in China, is in Shanghai, and now recently opened in Abu Dhabi as well, that collects CO2 and transforms that into diamonds, and which is fascinating. So, I don't think that machine alone is going to clean the CO2 of Shanghai. Of course.
But it still made something precious out of pollution.
And I think it makes us all think like what amount of CO2 is this capturing to be able to condense it into like this really dense, hard diamond. So I think no initiative alone will be able to tackle climate change, but I think from wherever we are, we should just contribute as much as we can through awareness or through the impact that we can, lowering the carbon footprint or raising awareness for programs.
So tell me, by the way, that's excellent, and I'm just a normal lace person when it comes to art, so I usually don't think about art in these terms. And today, listening to you for less than an hour, I feel like a lot of my life has been a lie. Like I should have paid more attention to these public arts, and I really did not realize until today the value of this public art category, this industry, this section, this immensely powerful form of communication. Even though I'm a communicator, I work for radio and I have podcasts, I still never thought about this as an excellent medium for communication. And today you have really shown so much light on that powerful tool. But what I want to know also is the future of public art. As you know, the public art, and we've been discussing mostly physical works of public art, and the physical world is becoming ever more less prominent, and the digital world is becoming more and more prominent. So what do you have to say about the digital fading into, or the physical public sphere fading into the digital public sphere, and what is the impact of us moving into the digital world? What impact is that going to have on public art? What's the service that public art is going to serve when most of us are living behind, TV screens, or living behind laptop screens, iPad screens, iPhone screens, and the new, of course, the virtual reality technologies?
I really like that question, and I think the digital and the physical, they're blurring more and more, and I think that makes the physical more relevant than ever. And through our shared experience during the COVID lockdown, when we were all glued to our phones, screens, our TVs and computers
forcibly, by the way,
forcibly for a number of months, I think when we opened the doors of Noor Riyadh in March 2021, after the first wave of COVID and after the first months of lockdown or semi-lockdown, we could not believe the appetite of our visitors and the people in Riyadh to be in shared spaces, to discover art, the curiosity, but definitely the appetite for shared experience in shared spaces. I think we live in a very fortunate time where the digital world allow us to work from anywhere. We can work remotely. We can work from different places in the world in a way that we couldn't 10 years ago. And I think also the lockdown also opened the door for many people also to work remotely. But I think that focus on digital could actually lead to isolation if we are not careful. And I think as social animals, because I think we human beings, we need connection. And for that connection, these physical spaces where we meet each other, we interact with each other, are more important than ever before. And public art could be a catalyst for that connection and that human connection.
What you're really saying, you said it very calmly and you were very composed while you were saying it, but my mind just exploded, because I guess what you were really saying is, by the way, public art can keep the physical realm relevant, because public art might still be able to entice people to leave their digital environments and enjoy the physical world. And it could be, because everything else you could get online, every single type of enjoyment now, even the most intimate types of enjoyment, you could get it now through digital channels. And what you're saying is, yes, but there is this thing called public art that will still keep people wanting to leave those digital areas and partake in the physical world. And I think that is very profound, because not the grocery store, so not my physical needs, not my communicative, emotional needs, not my familiar needs, not my other intimate needs, but my need to connect with my fellow human being in a space that I can enjoy might be the only thing to still get me away from my digital universe. I think that is very, very profound.
I agree, and you put it actually much better than I did. And recently we were in a museums conference this week, organized by our colleagues at the Ministry of Culture, and there was a conversation on the future of museums. And what you say is really relevant, because so we need the spaces that are not our home and not our work, where we shared our human experience and our human journey. And one of the challenges that museums have as well in the next years is how do they move from being a repository of valuable objects towards like a very valuable space for the community, and what is the value that they can bring to the community. So somebody goes to the museum not once a year, but twice a week. It's like, how do you actually make yourself relevant so to the community? So it's a space where the community wants to interact, wants to meet, wants to create, wants to share the experiences. And I think public art and taking the museum outside the four walls and transforming Riyadh into a gallery without walls, which is the aim of Riyadh Art.
Wow.
Is something that for us is a priority, and we can see the value and the impact that this has. But I think this is a conversation for all of us working in the creative sector, and how do we make sure that our institutions and our spaces are relevant in a world where the digital and the physical are intertwined.
Yes. But what about the digital world? Is there room for public art in the digital world? Do you see good applications or good examples of the space that public art is taking in the digital space?
I think we are yet to see how AR and VR evolves. I think there's been a lot of different instances where artists are using AR and VR, which are also tools to create works. I feel that the technology still need to develop, and we need to still see more commercial applications, and we still need to see AR and VR to become part of our daily lives, not just like a occurrence here and there, for them to take off fully and to see their application in public art. But I mean, I guess using these technologies, you could potentially experience an artwork, a public art that is not where you are. But again, you will be missing that physical connection. But I think it's something that we need to explore. I think what I've seen so far, I don't think it captures the same. These 360 tours and virtual reality tours, they fall a little bit short of enjoying the public art as one. As the artist definitely expects, or as one should enjoy it. And going back to the point about isolation and digital and the physical, I think that human connection is also very, very important part of public art. So let's look on what the future brings in terms of enjoying public art through different technologies. But I think having that physical connection with the work and with the people around you in this public realm, I think is always going to be important.
What do you think about the gaming sector? The gaming sector, like games through Assassin's Creed or Tomb Raider, or these explorative world kind of games. Do you think they are kind of at the cusp, or they're paving the road for these digital art realms?
That's a very good point. I mean, obviously, the gaming is using these technologies, is pushing these technologies and develop them to the maximum of their capacity at any given time. So I'm curious to see how gaming actually interacts with art, and how gaming pushes the boundaries of those technologies into the realm of art. So I'm very curious about that.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Miguel Blanco with us here in the studio. You're listening to Artifact, and I'm your host, Joshua Van Alstyne. Thank you so much for your time, Miguel.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. It's been very delightful and eye-opening, and you have my imaginative wheels turning, and I think I'm going to be delighted all day with all of the chemical happiness that I'm feeling with our conversation, and I'm sure that our audience will enjoy it just as much, if not more.
It's been a pleasure, and thank you very much, Joshua.
Thanks for listening to Artifact.
Thanks.
Subscribe for more great content right here on El Orla FM Podcast, the sound of Arabia.